Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 3PGC webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have Wendi Saggese with us. Wendi is an international speaker and leads workshops around the world. She founded the California-based mentoring company, Wake Up Your Wisdom, helping others wake up to the simple understanding that allowed her to love her life, despite a terminal cancer diagnosis. She works with individuals, couples, groups, and enjoys speaking on webinars and at live conferences. Before discovering the three principles, Wendi spent 37 years learning about the latest strategies for peace of mind, including a master practitioner certification from John Grinder, NLP co-founder, and 1 year of living and working at Byron Katie's Center for the Work, co-authoring their first certification manual. Exploring the three principles changed everything in Wendi's life. She sees helping others as a privilege and an honor that serves to deepen her love. Wendi, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
It's my privilege, as I said, and honor. Okay, so let's see, where would we start? I call this, let me go back to having that. I call this back to the basics. And the reason I did that is because it's really easy to get. I'm assuming that everybody here has a little experience, at least. Most of the people that I know that are here have some experience and have been following and exploring the three principles for a while. But I took a trip to Europe, England, and Prague, and it seems like a lot of times people, including myself, that have a lot of experience with the principles, start counting on ideas that they found to be true, or insights, let's call them insights, and they start getting in their head about the principles and not kind of back to the basics. And I find that we have to get back to the basics all the time, because it seems to me that as soon as I think I know something, I'm usually going in the wrong direction, because in a way, there's really nothing to know. And yeah, and we just don't need to rely on what we think we know. So I think one of the things that oh good, now it's on that side. Keeping it simple. Okay, so I'm gonna just start with keeping it simple. The other day, I got some bad news about cancer. Most of you know that I have stage 4 terminal cancer. And I got some bad news. And it was so interesting because I think for a half a day, I felt sad about it. And I did no monitoring. Oh, you teach the three principles. You should feel this way, or you shouldn't be upset. I didn't do any of that. I just allowed for what is coming up in the present moment, which I was sad. Well, surprisingly, I woke up out of that in half a day and I was fine. Emotionally, I was fine. Nothing changed in terms of the cancer, but I was fine. And I remember during that period of time, my husband had said to me, just don't think about it. And I'm like, rolled my eyes at him, and I'm like, well, you have cancer and you just don't think of it. But I still did listen to him. I just didn't think about it. So how unprofound is that? I mean, we think it's this big thing, the principles and the understanding. And it's actually, I just didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. You know why? Because I knew that thought just takes you out of this present moment. And I know for sure that any thought about my future with cancer is not going to serve me to make me happy at all. In fact, it's going to freak me out. Like, how simple is that? I just didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. Now, if my crazy, monkey, weird, idiotic human mind decided to start thinking about it, which, as we know in the principles, we have no control over what our mind decides to pick up and think about. If my crazy mind started thinking about it, I didn't think about the fact that I was thinking about it. Yes, we feel our feet thinking. Yes, it's horrible to feel bad. I mean, obviously with the news lately and the committing suicide and all these things, feeling bad, we know it's horrible, it's compelling, but it's a feeling, and any extraneous thought about the feeling is actually going away from the peace and quiet that your mind has that can heal you, that can allow you to feel differently. So that's firstly what I wanted to say. So keeping it simple, obviously, like, how simple is that? A 2-year-old can understand. Just don't think about it. Like, you start to kind of get hip to yourself that, see, thought, any thought, like, we think we have to think about it. So yeah, it makes total perfect sense that if I have cancer, I need to somehow figure out if I'm going to do treatment or what treatment I'm going to do or what I'm going to do next. But if I'm having a feeling, a bad feeling, I don't need to think about it and figure it out. The quieter your mind is, the more things come to you what to do next. And just to add on to that little story, the funniest thing happened to me. During that week, I don't know why, I saw the doctor on, let's say, the week prior. And then I said to my husband, I'm going to make a doctor's appointment with a nurse practitioner. And he asked me, well, why? You just saw the doctor. You don't need a nurse practitioner or doctor's appointment. And I said, I don't really know. I didn't really know why I made the appointment. Well, it turned out that it occurred to me to make the appointment, so I just did it. I actually didn't really need to know why, which is very different than how I used to be. So it just occurred to me to do that. And then it occurred to me to call a friend of mine that was on a treatment for cancer. And she told me some new drugs that are out and some other things. And I thought, oh, okay, that's why I made the appointment. Cool. I did need to make the appointment. And just to add to that, if people in your world ask you, well, why did you make that appointment? Or what are you going to decide to do? It's really easy to help them help you stay in the moment with things. One of the things I do is my son, who's 16, we have to make a choice for which high school he's going to go to. And so when people ask me, they get kind of nervous. What high school's going to do? You got to plan. You got to figure it out. You got to do all this. And I just say, we're going to make a decision the day before high school starts. So that leaves it off the table for them to ask me any questions in case I'm feeling fragile about really trying to be in the unknown about the decision before I make the decision. Now, what I've noticed about that decision and about the idea of just feeling like you want to make a doctor's appointment, what I noticed is you don't really need to know anything. Like, you could support yourself to be in the unknown. Now, as I've told my son, friends of mine, and my husband and my son, as I've said, we're going to decide the day before school starts, I've noticed my opinion about which school, which choice to make has gotten less and less. I've dropped more and more into the unknown, the real not knowing without any opinion at all. And it's so freeing to just be in the unknown with that. Okay, so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I don't know why I put let our feelings be our guide. Yeah. I talked to one of my sons this morning, and he talked about all these feelings he was having. And I reminded him that our feelings are not our guide as to what we need to do in the world. See, that was the mistake that I had years ago. If I felt really bad about something, that meant something. But actually, our feelings are not our guide to, oh, Wendy, you have to choose to do this treatment, or you have to choose to go to this high school. No, our feelings are our guide to go back inside and get quiet with it. And allow yourselves to just move in and out of your feelings freely, and then you're present to make the decision. So that's all I have to say about that. And moving towards progress with ourselves and clients. Oh my gosh, it took me 5 years into the principles to really start understanding this. Yeah, I know people say, look at the progress, don't look at the negative part. But when I was doing a little seminar for the Innate Health Center in London, there was this lovely, lovely gentleman that wanted to eventually teach. And he spoke a lot about like what wasn't together in his life. And he spoke about how at some point in his life, he was contemplating suicide. So he spoke about this beautiful feeling that came over him. And he just knew that that was no longer something he wanted to do. And he spoke in depth about it, and it was really moving. And the other people in the room, I know everyone felt chills up and down their spine. So he spoke about this beautiful feeling he had and how he just had this knowingness that he didn't need to commit suicide, that just wasn't something he needed to do. And then right after he told us this beautiful moving story, he said, but I don't have my housing together. I'm not making any money. I'm not getting out of bed. And he just went on and on and on. And I said, wait, stop. Everything before the but, if you shared in a room of people that are trying to get over drug addiction, that would move them just up to the but. And I said to him, it's like your religion to go to the bad stuff that you don't have together to try to figure it out. And he got a little offended, it looked like. So I said, no, it's not your religion. It's our religion. As human beings, we think the stuff that isn't worked out yet is where we have to look so we can work it out. Like, that's logical. I think maybe we were taught that, or it just comes natural to me personally. I notice it comes natural to my 16-year-old when he has a bad baseball day. Right after the baseball game, his mind wants to say, well, I did this, and I need to improve this, and I need to improve that. And because we've been familiar with the principles for a while, we're usually in a nice spot to remind him, let's do something else. Let's think about something else. And when you settle down, you'll look at everything differently. So this lovely gentleman, he heard me. He stopped for a minute and he said, oh yeah, I thought I had to have my finances together and all of these things in order to help people. And I said, no, because your story up until the but was just as moving as the gentleman that was in the big conference. His name was Alfie, for those of you who were there. And he spoke about how the principles had changed his life. And he was still in prison. And people were moved to tears. There was maybe about 1,000 people listening to him. And people were moved to tears. Now, he didn't go into all this stuff. Well, he was still in prison. He was kind of in prison in some way where he was able to leave the prison facilities. He just spoke about what he saw. There's no end to the idea of looking at your progress, looking at where do you see the principles and building on that. It's like, so that gentleman, I'm so sure that if he just tells the story, he could tell that same story about that beautiful feeling that came to him and he realized he didn't have to commit suicide. He could tell that same story for the rest of his life and still move people, because that's so rich and beautiful and moving. The other things that you want to have figured out, they'll come to you through the focusing on your progress. Now, it's so tempting to focus on your not progress. And it took me a while with working with clients. What would happen to me is I would be in a conversation with somebody and they'd say their but, and they'd start going into their content. And I remember thinking, this is above my pay grade. This feels yucky, and I don't know how to answer that question. Well, I started getting hip to myself, and this is the let your feelings be your guide. This is what I meant by that. I'd feel this feeling when they went into content. But instead of realizing something else, I kind of went into myself and thought, oh, I just don't know the answer to that. But what I started to come to realize is that when I get that feeling, that is so often the person going into the dark side, going into where they don't have it together and wanting to figure it out through their past traumas or their childhood or what they don't have handled in their life. So if you have that feeling, like for me, I would then think about it and think, oh, that means Wendi Saggese is not equipped to answer the question. So I didn't even let my feelings be my guide right away. It took me, maybe a couple of years to start saying, oh, that feeling, because I don't have an answer to people's content question. There's no answer to how that lovely gentleman is going to do his life and take care of his housing. It's like the answer is going to come from within him through his observing his progress. It'll build on that like a mathematical equation. It keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what I've seen in my life. I think what I saw is that very recently, I'm kind of a bit of a pessimist. Yeah, if you look at my bio, I tried very hard for 37, 40 years to do things to feel better about life and not be such a pessimist. Well, I wasn't a pessimist about other people. Now, my particular flavor of insecurity was kind of like a pessimist about myself. And it looked weird because friends of mine that are in the principles would say how great and light life is and how wonderful they are. And I felt different and I felt better and I felt like there was nothing to fix, but I still didn't see life as joyous and skipping around and happy. So it seems to me what happened was I didn't resist the fact that I was sad or pessimistic about things. I just started to make friends with things. So I made friends with the way I was. And the amount of happiness that I'm even seeing, even in the midst of stupid cancer, is shifting to a new level that I hadn't experienced before, a new sustainable level of happiness, where I have these moments where I'm like, even in the middle of a doctor's appointment, even with some dire news, I'm like, I still could be happy in the middle of that. And that started happening for me personally as I made friends with where I'm at. But that's not static. There's nothing about the principles that is static. Yeah, okay, yesterday I made friends with my sadness. But then today, I'm here in the present moment. But always to make friends with your frailties and your sadness and anything you don't like about yourself. You think you have to not like it to change it, but it's the opposite. Make friends with everything you don't like as much as you can, and even make friends with the fact that sometimes you just can't make friends with it. You just don't have it in you right at that moment. You never know what the next moment will bring to you. So one of my very favorite topics to talk about, just because I get so caught up in this, is the seductive nature of bad feelings. So it's along the same lines as what we're talking about. But it's so super seductive when we have a bad feeling to react out of that. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and his name for that is the pain body, which in my estimation is just a lot of thoughts that maybe they're repetitive thoughts that you've had for a long time, so you give even more truth to it. So what I noticed from that is, I'll tell you a story about my observation of something that George Pransky did. We were at a conference for a company in Los Angeles, and the mentees of George Pransky did separate groups with people, so we kind of gathered information from the small groups to see where everyone was at. And some of the people in my group were kind of confused. They were like, he talked about thought all day long. What is this thought? We get it already. And they were just not really hearing it, it seemed. And so some of us went back to George, and I know I went back to George and I said, you know, it doesn't seem like people are getting it. And he said, what I recall, so this is Wendy's rendition of it, if George Pransky is hearing me or anybody else is hearing me, my rendition was, I saw this gentleman who's been studying these principles for a very long time and exploring them and teaching them, and he's brilliant. And what I heard him say to me is, I'm discouraged, and it seemed like he didn't want to talk about it. He's like, I'm not going to talk about the discouragement. We have a whole full day to get through to these people and to teach more about the principles. So here's the way I saw that. It's like the discouragement, even in a gentleman that's been teaching this for so long, it's this human thing. And to me, it feels like a magnet that wants to pull you in the direction of discouragement in your innocence to try to do better. And what I saw George do was refuse to even go there. It's not like the discouragement seemed that it wasn't present. He wasn't floating off into enlightened oblivion. He was just this human being that just refused to go there. It's almost kind of like you have to turn your head to go in a different direction. So when you feel discouraged, that's so human. But you sometimes have to help yourself and just remember or turn your head or don't get discouraged and try to act out of that. Well, I will tell you, the following day at that conference, George Pransky was absolutely hands down brilliant. He moved these people that had no understanding of the principles, that didn't see the impact for their lives, that thought maybe their management team should be learning this stuff. Why do they need to be there? And he just brought it in such a beautiful way. And I don't think that it's necessarily ever not going to be tempting to go into the dark side to figure out the new. It's just something to observe about yourself and know that it's not you, it's human. So let's see, what else do we have on the board here? Staying with what we know and forgetting the rest. I hear so many people getting into the jargon of the three principles. It's my thinking. I know it's thought. And you don't have to know anything. The only place that it's valuable to even understand anything is in this present moment, because any thought about the future and what you think you knew yesterday and what you think you know in the future is bringing you away from the present moment. And the beauty is all found in this moment. And it doesn't matter what you know, or getting jargony, or using the right words for the principles. Just come from what you know and forget the rest. When I was in England, I did this a million times. I would be talking to a big group of people, and I hear myself kind of going off in a tangent about something. And I'd say, wait a minute, Wendi, get back to center. What's your experience? What do you feel? What do you know? How has this changed your life? And I would realize that, I would realize in some of my courses, if I was feeling a little bit bored, then that would mean to me that I was kind of off into something that wasn't real for me. And it was so fun to just keep coming back to this feeling I have, this insight I had, that this is all for your entertainment. You're here for the 100 years you're here for. There's nothing you have to do. There's no one you have to reach. There's not even anyone out there really but you. So when I found myself trying to fix someone or trying to get a message across to someone, I came back to me and said, wait a minute, this is for your entertainment. This is for your joy, to bring your joy into the picture. There's no one out there that needs fixing. People will hear what they hear when they hear it, if they want to hear it. Like, I didn't hear it. I still don't hear it sometimes. The world is okay just the way that it is. You're not anyone's savior. You're not here to save someone. You're just here. The wisdom inside of you, mind, oneness, whatever you want to call it, is just here to connect with other people's oneness. And it just was such a beautiful way that kept me honest without talking theory about the principles. So that's what I have to say so far. I'm just amazed at the power of this understanding, because I can't believe this level that I feel like I've jumped to being even a more happy person. Now, yeah, I still have cancer going on and treatment ideas. And by the way, in my life, it's super true that as you get clearer mind, you see different things. Like, how did my explanation of why I called that particular doctor and made an appointment was because I was clear-headed. I didn't have to think about why I was doing it or what I was doing it. And I really, more than ever in my whole life, feel clear to make treatment decisions for myself that will be the best decisions without having to know anything. Like, the freedom that it feels to say to my family, we don't know what high school you're going to. We'll know the day before. I don't know what treatment I'm going to do. Like, a week ago, I thought I knew about a treatment that I was going to do. I was sure of it. And then things happened, and I didn't think I was going to change my mind, and I changed my mind. And now I have other doctor's appointment, and I'm just open to changing my mind again. You don't need to know what you're going to do. And take it from me, because I was the most hard on myself, pessimistic about myself, and the worst decision maker on the planet. I would fret so much. I'd talk to 20 girlfriends and still not know what I was going to do. But if I can change and I can have more freedom in life, I just feel like this is really here for us. This is this wonderful understanding. And you could take it just to better your life a little bit and realize things about little habits, be more successful in your business, or you could take it to the nth degree of just whatever enlightenment means, just being, maybe enlightenment to me means just being 100% present in the moment more often, being more happy, being okay with your frailties, your mistakes. It's just an amazing understanding, and there's no end to the impact it can have on you and people in your life. So that's what I got so far. What do you guys got? Any questions? Anyone want to unmute themselves? And thanks for coming. I really appreciate you guys coming, because when we hear this discussion, it's like all we could do is grow more. It's like the seed was planted and it just gets bigger and more colorful. And first we see, oh, it's thought, and then we see everything's thought. So somebody had their hand up. Go for it. Who is that?
Hey there.
Hi, Nikki. And also
Hey.
the gentleman also afterwards. Okay, go ahead, Nikki.
Nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah, and great to listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really was. So I have a question, or I'll just share something with you. So what really resonated with me is that, like, the first part where you described how for this gentleman and also within yourself, so thanks for your honesty, by the way, how it's so easy to focus on, you know, the habitual stuff that you would like to see different. And how to formulate my question. I just wrote it down. I'm going to look at it. So it's kind of it has two sides to it, this thing that I'm wondering. It's like, because me personally have had insights that have been worth sharing, but I have trouble kind of without sharing it. So when if I'm not sharing it, how to kind of stick with that truth somehow for myself. I do have stuff coming back, but as I'm also still quite attached to the habitual, I find, I'm just wondering if you have, I know there's no how-tos, but that's just my question without making it sound perfect.
So tell me your question again.
If you've had insights which you know that are true, and how to personally stick with that more, or like you said, like, you know, focus on that more and let that guide you, like the guy that you were explaining in the beginning, and not, I just don't really know how to look at that, because I would still be very pulled by my, like, the habitual stuff and what's not going right. So I'm just wondering what that looks like, you know, to stick with, apart from stuff coming back to you. But if your previous insights not necessarily come back 50 times a day, like, how would you kind of stick with what you've seen is true?
I have a question for you. This may be way off, but what do you see? What does an insight mean to you?
Well,
or your previous ones?
When I heard something from inside, which I knew was true and was very opposite from what I previously knew. It feels different.
So new, basically new. A new thought about something, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, and energetically, like it's a type of energetic experience that kind of clears the stuff that feels old. And then I would, yeah.
Now, here's the thing. You already have this, by the way. You already understand this. Because you heard it in the story with a gentleman that I spoke about. Now, here's the thing. It's like if an insight is a new thought about something, you're going back into the old thoughts to try to find new thoughts when you're going back into the stuff that wasn't ready yet, that isn't handled yet, let's say. The stuff that you want to be better in your life. When you're going into that, you're innocently going into that, trying to find an answer. And my favorite saying that I always say of all times, I guess, is there's no clean clothes in the dirty laundry.
Right.
Super simple, right? There's no new stuff in the old stuff. And if you're feeling sort of let your feelings be your guide. If you feel yuck when you say, like, if I start thinking about, oh no, what if he doesn't go to that? What if it doesn't work out in that high school? If I start like feeling my thought and it feels bad, that's a guide to know to shut it down. Don't spend time over there to try to figure it out. No, you're going to want to, because in my experience, I always want to, like, but as you start seeing, and you start just seeing it, you start kind of getting hip to your stuff. You get hip to your wanting to go into that. And you'll find your way of seeing that. Does that answer your question or no?
I think I got that far, but it's probably less. It's just an organic thing. I guess that's what you're saying, right?
Do you mean it's organic to want to go there to fix it?
No, I guess just to, and there's a really big chance that I'm just being too perfectionistic about this, you know. But I guess organic, that you'll just kind of catch that. I guess I see all that, everything that you just described, but then obviously I don't. Otherwise, I wouldn't fall for it in those moments. But I just see that attachment there, and like the really like the almost. Yeah, not being able to distance myself from where I don't see it, and you know, the stuff that it's not good, and it's like I see myself doing it, and I still do it.
Okay, well, here's what I hear. First of all, I don't believe attachment is a truth, and I don't believe you have to distance yourself. And I don't believe that this isn't something that's going to come natural to you. It just, sometimes it takes time. I mean, sometimes people play the piano and they learn the music and they're still looking at the writing and it doesn't flow. And the beauty of the principles is that you might see thought in a way, and you might see this through your insights a little bit. And it just continues to grow without you. You don't have to worry about it. It's going to do it on its own, just by you kind of looking a little bit in direction, just by you being in the conversation, you'll just start to see more. You don't have to see it all right now. And you're not going to see everything right now. Even George Pransky once said, I heard him say about a year or two ago, he said, I wish I could recall everybody that I ever taught, because in the last 3 months, my level has risen in a way. So what I found in the principles, unlike some of the other things, it does it. It does it for you. It's your innate health comes up and helps you with things. It's amazing. It's magic in a way. It's not magic.
Yeah, yeah. I have experienced that. I guess it's just, and it's the same as the gentleman that that you mentioned, that I would feel a hypocrite if I'd be sharing something that hasn't like transformed me. But then again, you're not always aware of the way that you did change. Like you could also be completely blind to some improvement.
Well, even with him, can't you see how, like, just sharing that moment, let's say in a room full of people that are considering suicide, just sharing his moment of seeing something more than suicide would be enough to really move people?
Yeah, the way you said it today, that's the first time where I had that opinion about it. Yeah. But before today, I guess I thought that, well, this is an opinion. I just had the opinion that you shouldn't share stuff unless it's been super transformational for you.
You know, it doesn't sound transformational what I told you about just don't think about it. Like it sounds as unprofound as we possibly can be. Like, I didn't go into a deep, dark depression when I heard bad news about cancer because I just didn't think about it. Like, how unprofound is that? You know, it's just another thing about George. He says, it's so funny. George, my favorite saying of his is, it's just us girls having tea. This is the most natural, organic thing we have. 2-year-olds know this better than us. 2-year-olds fall down. They're running to get, let's say, a red brick, a red Lego block, and they fall down and they hurt their knee and they cry and they don't think, oh no, I fell. Let me figure out why I fell and how I fell, and let me analyze it and work on it. No, they get up and they're still motivated to go towards that brick. Yeah. So this is just us getting back to what we already knew. We just are covering it with thought. And listen, we're innocent. The human condition is the human condition. We learn this stuff. It might take a minute. And guess what? This is the other point that I had written down. You're no different than anybody else. Every single person has frailties. Some of them I'd like to have better than the ones I have. But even people in the principles, that they still have their humanness. So it's innocent. You still think that you have to go into the dirty laundry at times. Me too. Sometimes I still think I have to go into that dirty laundry to get some new thought. I do it all the time. But do I do it less than I ever did it? Yes. And am I happier than I ever have? Yes. You don't have to make this happen for you. It just is the most natural thing. It just keeps on evolving.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure, Nikki. Thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thanks a lot. I'll let someone else go now. See ya.
Hi, Wendi.
Hi. What's your name?
Chris.
Oh, Chris. Hi, Chris. I couldn't quite see it.
You see a lot of people, but I've been in a few webinars and conversations with you in the past, and it's very nice to see you. And part of what I wanted to say was just thank you. A lot of what I'm getting from this experience today isn't really, I can't really verbalize it, but I'm very grateful to be here. I keep hearing from inside and out that I've already got this, or, you know, I just keep hearing that, and I like it. I was gonna, a story came to mind, a really quick one, and if I don't know if it makes sense, but I just keep, and that was, I used to work in a direct mail house because I'm a graphic designer, and I used to work in magazine subscriptions. We had these cards that would come in the mail, and all you could do is rip it in half and drop it back in the mail, and you're subscribed to the magazine. but we didn't get very good responses. But when we added these stickers on here that you had to peel off and put in little squares on the card and do all these things, then the response rate went really high because people didn't realize that they could get it without doing anything. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just keep finding, I feel like something's happening in this understanding. I've been involved with it. I seem like everybody's growing or going to different levels, and I've been involved in this for like 6 years or whatever. And lately I've been pretty much doing nothing. I've been really, for the first time, really fully just engaged in my graphic design business and in my garden. And I've been, and I have, you know, I listen a little here and there, and I haven't been to one of these webinars in a long time, but it just seems like, I don't know, I'm finding this place. It's just of letting go and doing less, and finding myself right here, right now, with some sort of understanding that I can't even verbalize, that I'm really enjoying. And yet, and of course, there is part of me that, you know, wants to, like, I'm just so sorry you have cancer, and I just want to fix it and all that. And I feel so much for you and your family. And I don't know, I'm even getting better at that, because my answer to everything used to be to try to give advice and fix people, even no matter how crazy my life was. And I'm just going to sit here and listen to the rest of everybody. But I am just so grateful that you shared with us today, and I want you to know how helpful it has been. Thank you.
That's really sweet, Chris. And I didn't forget you. I remember you. Yeah, that's sweet. And it seems to me that a lot of people just go back and do their lives, you know, and listen when we can. It's like life becomes your teacher if you're just, even sometimes you just have a little peripheral vision on the principles. You just have a little bit where you're in the conversation and you get drawn to do things, and life becomes your teacher. Life becomes the principles. The principles are us. As I've seen some people say, we are the principles. There are no principles, they're us. But what's magnificent is what you're saying and what you're pointing to, that you feel yourself evolving without doing anything. And it doesn't matter that some people want to do something and figure it out and get it done. That's just us innocently doing the best we can to feel a little better. That's okay. That's just human. We're just human. You know, oral frailties, all the things I tried to fix for how many years. I'm starting to finally just see, oh yeah, those are just human. And the less personal you make all those things, like the less, so Wendi Saggese says that there's nothing to do, but today you're trying to do. Well, that's not personal that you're trying to do. That's just what occurs to you right now. Maybe tomorrow would occur to you to do the same thing. Maybe you want to still write the lists of pros and cons to make the decision. That's okay. We're just looking at trying to suffer a little bit less. Like, I didn't see until the last little while, my principles understanding was more like to suffer less. But now I'm actually becoming more and more happy. And I'm really, really seeing the separation. Yeah, I'm doing everything for the cancer that I want to do, but I'm really seeing that the unhappiness about the cancer, there's something changing in me where I'm starting to see the unhappiness about the situation doesn't really serve me. And it's not really necessary. I'm just starting to see that, and maybe you could too. Who else has a question?
I have. Hello, Wendi.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. So what
nice picture.
Thank you. Well, what you're saying, as I hear it, is just trust the moment.
That sounds about right.
Because, you know, instead of planning or thinking forward or thinking backward or, you know, trying to understand, you also said you don't know, you don't have to know what to do.
That's freeing to me. Now, it's not that you can't plan. Like some people enjoy planning, so plan away. I'm not saying not to plan, but the enjoying the moment part, and the last thing you said, what was that last thing you just said?
Well, just be in the moment. That's what I got. You know, this in a way trusting that that something else than your thinking is present in your life. Yeah. It's like when I'm drawing or painting or doing what I do, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't even have, sometimes I don't even have the feeling that I know why or how. It just happens. And that's very freeing for me. It's like art or, creative life force, whatever. Just being a conduit, I guess. And that's freeing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so freeing for me too. And again, it doesn't mean you don't plan, because you sit down and you plan to make a painting and maybe it's a commission, so you have a certain idea. But just allowing to be present in the present moment, even if you have a plan, for me is so freeing, because what I have noticed, like for instance with Thomas's high school, I said I was in the unknown, but I saw that I was a little opinionated towards one direction. But I dropped into a more unknown, because in the complete unknown, something will happen. He'll go to a high school, but the letting go of having to know even a teensy tiny bit, or even having a preference to one school above the other, like to get deeper and deeper into the feeling of really having no clue. Like from that having no clue, it's not like you then go into, this is what people sometimes think, okay, then I go in my bed and I do nothing about it. No. What's so cool about this whole experience with the high school thing, for instance, is it hasn't stopped me from researching and talking to each of the high schools. It's actually allowed me to do more of that. The same with the cancer treatment. I thought I knew I was really on a path to do this one treatment. And I sort of gave lip service to this idea of the unknown. I mean, maybe it's a good idea to try it with something that doesn't mean a lot to you. But I gave this lip service to, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I still talk to doctors about different things. But it started out with just lip service, but with a sort of a leaning towards something. But what I'm noticing is, as I get more and more into it, not just being lip service, but really, truly not knowing what's next, I feel like I make much better decisions. I feel like I do more research and do my due diligence about each high school and about each treatment option. Like you would think it's the opposite, right? But that's not how it's happening for me. So we're not saying, like people think that when you say, be in the unknown, we're saying don't do your due diligence, just lay down and don't care about anything. No, you don't be a doormat. You actually, when you're just free, you actually are more motivated to do more. That's my experience. That I find amazingly cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. You didn't really have a question. You were just saying.
I was just saying hello.
I appreciate that. I love your hellos. And I love what you did on the end of that film. That's really sweet.
Thank you.
Someone said, hi, Wendy, I can really feel your happiness. Hi, Ellen. Thanks. Yeah, it's coming through. It's moving. Thanks for noticing that. Anyone else? Talk. Somebody talk.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, who's that?
Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
So I've been listening to various three principal and Syd Banks speakers speak, and I'm having a confusion about, kind of life is just happening. And I feel like I heard one of them say kind of, we're not in control. This is all just happening. But I feel like I'm a co-creator, so I'm trying to understand the difference between, well, I mean, is just happening the way it's happening and we're along for the ride, or are we co-creating? What is your feeling about that?
Tell me more of what you mean by co-creating.
I don't feel like, well, co-creating to me is that I have free will. I have the free will to make decisions about my life. It's not all written in stone.
So is your question kind of like, is it just fate or is it not just fate? Is that kind of what you mean?
That would be another way to say it for sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that question is beyond my pay grade. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to be of service and tell you something really profound, but okay, let's see if I could know. I don't know ultimately. I don't know ultimately if I'm going to die or not. Like maybe I'll find a great treatment and I'll live another 50 years. Well, not 50 probably, but let's say I live another 30 years. I don't feel like I'm necessarily in control of that. I'm going to do whatever I do in the moment. Like, what do you hope to gain from your question? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, I think I just want to say that one of the things I heard the first time when someone said, you don't have to worry about it. Like it's just happening through you. Like you don't have to take it all responsibility. And so I thought, oh, that's nice. That was very relaxing. I can just kind of, okay. And then somebody else was saying very clearly, no, if we're one with Source, then Source is doing it all. And that didn't sit as truth to me. One of the reasons it doesn't sit as truth to me, and it may just be my mind, is that I am an intuitive and I sit with people and I talk to them about their life and what I see coming, and I see different possible paths. And as their consciousness changes, I see them more aligning with one outcome than another. So that's why it's uncomfortable to me. Because I'm thinking, am I been making that up? It seems to be true. It feels like it's true.
Okay, so here's what's really simple about answering your question about what you said. I forget what you said at first, but you said that felt really good.
Yeah.
Just stick with that. You don't have to figure out the rest. It's
okay.
Not going to help. It's so funny, our human nature, that we think we have to know a certain thing. Like that's the part where like, stick with what you know and forget the rest. If it feels good to you, then stick with that. And if something doesn't resonate with you, forget about it. And then maybe in a month or something, all of a sudden you'll hear the thing that didn't resonate with you and it'll feel good. And then maybe you go in that direction. But stick with what feels good.
I think there's a combination. It feels good to feel like the universe is, sending me energy and carrying me along, and I'm participating. That's what feels the best to me. Because anyway, that's what feels the best to me. So I'm going to stick with it for now. How's that?
How does that feel to just really fully 100% stick with what feels good?
That feels the best to me. Because when someone else's truth really bumps up against me and I'm saying, okay, I'll be open to that possibility, but I can't sit, it just never settles in me. I just can't take on someone else's truth until I have that insight that says, yeah, that resonates as true.
And here's the thing, even if that person is right, like my favorite teachers happen to be George and Linda Pransky Dickin, even if they say something that sounds really right, who cares if it's not, if I don't own it, like if it's not part of me and doesn't feel right, I don't have to buy into anything. Like I see a lot in the principles of a lot of theories that sometimes I'll look and say, oh, that sounds really cool. But sometimes it just feels very intellectualizing it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like some people, I've heard even clients say, well, I need to know that everything is inside out. No, you don't need to know anything. You have an experience where you start seeing it and you see it more and more and more until you see it. I don't see, I've done so many years of other things and I don't see how somebody's theory is going to help my moment in life. So
Yeah.
I'd rather stick to the moment. Like, for instance, I know that if I feel bad and I start going in the path of the bad feeling, I know that I could very easily bring myself to my knees and have a very terrible day. So in the moments that I'm aware of that, not always, then I just go the other direction. It's so simple like that. You don't have to know anything. You don't even have to know the answer to your question.
Right. And I guess I don't have to be right. Part of that's wanting to be right. That's the ego, right? I'm just realizing that to say I need to know this is that wanting to be right rather than, to look foolish or whatever. So I'm going to be okay with not knowing and following what feels right. I think that's what feels right to me right now.
I love the way you say that's what feels right to me right now. Because right now could be different tomorrow, and that's keeping it open.
Yeah.
So super simple. Go with what feels good. Like how simple, if it feels bad, maybe do something else. Like it's so simple, the principles. The two-year-olds know the principles. So
yeah.
I'm not just talking to you, just in general, back to the basics, simplicity. And I wrote somewhere, I can't find it now, but Jesus, stay with what you know and forget the rest. Like, how cool is that? Like, I hear somebody at a big conference talking and it sounds really intriguing and exciting. And I think, I have to know that. I have to talk about that. No, I don't. Stay with what I know. Forget everything else. Because every one of you and every person in the world could really move somebody, could really teach this stuff if you just really stay with what's real for you. I mean, that gentleman, it doesn't matter if he lived in a halfway house or anything. That experience, I don't tell it as well as he did, but how something came over him and he just knew that he didn't commit suicide, that could move any audience anywhere if he just really stayed with that. You don't need anything else. Because see, let's say we're in a big conference and that gentleman talks about his experience where he realized he doesn't have to commit suicide. Everybody's in their own little separate head thinking their own little things, and that could touch anybody in the audience, just that. I mean, even if you look back and you think about the writings of Syd Banks, it seemed as if the gentleman that was telling Syd Banks the very original thing, that you're not insecure, whatever it was he told Syd Banks, and Syd Banks got this huge insight. And he says, the guy didn't even know what he said to him. He didn't even realize what he said. So the guy wasn't even hip to what he said. Syd Banks was just right for the moment to hear something. It's kind of like a fruit. It's like you could pull and pull and pull on a fruit when it's not ripe. But when it's ripe, you just pluck it off the thing. if it's right for someone or for us to hear something, we can hear it from a 2-year-old. We could hear it from someone that never heard of the principles in their life. Because the principles, you know, I talk about this a lot lately too. And this was what I found brilliant about George's talk to these new people at a company. He talked about the principles are not another set of values. They're not a set of values or ideas. They're just facts about the way the human mind works. And when you kind of know those facts, it gives you an extra piece of the puzzle so you can work your mind maybe a little bit better. You know, if you're caught up in thinking and you feel bad, you feel thought. That's just what a fact. You don't have to buy anything. Like at some point in that seminar, the people seemed to be thinking that we were teaching, if you're calm, then you'll do better. You'll have a competitive edge in business. But we weren't teaching that it's a value to be calm, to be a certain way. It was more like when you understand how this works, you're calm. But don't worry if you have moments where you're not calm, because so do I, so does everybody. Because I don't understand how it works, except sometimes. But when I'm in my dark moment, I'm having a misunderstanding. And so you could just relax and know that just like your body comes up and heals a cut and somehow puts the skin together when something's an open wound, most of the time, that's what's available to you when you have a lot of unhappy thoughts going on or misunderstandings. Who else? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to read what Robert said. Oh, do we have a taker?
I was just going to say that there is a note in there from Carolyn. I talked to you once and you mentioned something about taking a U-turn. Can you talk about that again?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Was I talking about I guess basically, I guess I could talk about one of my clients who had a lot of violent thinking and was hospitalized. And in working with her, first it was like, I have a violent thought. I don't think she ever acted on the violent thoughts. So at first, there was a lot of meaning in that thought. Like if I have a violent thought, that means I might act on it, something's wrong with me, like a long, long list of what that means to have the thought. Well, over time, she realized that that thought on its own is transient. And if you don't personalize it with a lot of extra thinking, add-on thinking, I call it, it just kind of goes. It's our placeholder. We're well-meaning trying to get rid of the violent thought. And rightfully so. We just do that as human beings. So we're well-meaning, thinking it's bad, thinking it's horrible. Whenever the violent thought pops up, oh no, I feel my thinking, I need to get rid of this thought. Well, what happened to her? She started seeing that. And when the violent thought came, it started to be not a lot of meaning, not a lot of personalization. And over time, it seemed like it just stopped making sense to her to put a lot of meaning on those thoughts. And then at some point she started talking just about how she doesn't even worry about school, just normal kid problems. She doesn't worry so much about her exams anymore because it doesn't make sense. So in essence, what happens is as you start seeing this a little bit and a little more and a little more, it's like you make a U-turn from the way that you used to think. See, I used to think if I have a bad feeling, then I need to fix it. If my kid is depressed, which I still do sometimes, I want to find out. I want to work on it. I want to ask him what's wrong. I want to talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. Well-meaning as I may be, believe it or not, I'm actually feeding the depression. Now, the U-turn is like your body wants to go feed the depression and talk to the kid about the depression because you're so used to it. And you start taking a U-turn and not doing that as much, or maybe just talking about something completely different. Because see, what happens is you start to understand that even your children or your family members that aren't interested in being in the principles, I have one of those too. I have one that's interested and one that's not. And even the one that's interested does not want to hear it. So what you start realizing is, they are innately healthy. They will bounce back and be resilient, whether they know the principles or not. So you start just taking a U-turn from your old way of like trying to analyze or do something with the thought. And I don't always do that. Sometimes if my kid feels depressed, I'll ask him, are you depressed? Are you depressed? Got to be the most annoying thing to ask a kid, but I'm annoying sometimes. But you kind of take a U-turn from the old way of trying to fix yourself. Like the U-turn from having to know, okay, I have to know which high school my kid is going to so I could plan, and I would have to sell an apartment and I would have to do all these things and figure it out. Well, as you start taking the U-turn, it's almost like there's more surprises along the way. Did I expect to become a less pessimistic, more happy person? Not really. Certainly not with terminal cancer. But like these little surprises start popping up as you take a U-turn from your idea that the pain is the place to mess with things. Like I had a client for a long time. She might be on here. I adore her. She taught me so much. She would get so mad at me about her childhood. She would yell at me all the time. And she'd get really into it and I'd get stuck. I'd have that feeling like, ugh, I must not be that good. I don't have the answer to that. I didn't know at the time that I was just buying into her content and thinking that was some place to mess with to make her feel better. And then I started taking a U-turn from that just because I saw it, not because in theory I decided to then take a U-turn. I started seeing it. I started getting hit to my feeling when she'd go into the content. And I started taking a U-turn from even thinking that that content matters. Even if it's bad content, like, you know, you got to admit it. I have some credibility here. I do have cancer. Like, it's some life-threatening content. But even that, it's like you want to just get into the problem. You want to like fix the problem. You want to obsess about the problem. But sometimes you could see there's no problem. How could there be a problem if there's no future and there's no past and there's only this moment? Do you have to look at it as a problem to want more? Obviously, with the story I told about the gentleman, if he just stayed with what he knew and what feels really good, that's where the help is. That's where the hope is. That's where the beauty in life is. But that doesn't stop Wendi Saggese from going into the problem when there's problems. She still does it. And that's okay. That's just humanness. That's just something to make friends with about myself. So what? I'm a human and I get stuck and I start to obsess about my problems. Oh, well, maybe tomorrow I won't. So there was another question. I hope that answered your question. You're welcome, Carolyn, to speak up if you have another idea. But Robert, Lily, to everyone, I think there's a lot of level confusion in the 3P world. Some statements are true from the absolute point of view only. However, the absolute has no point of view. I'm not sure what you mean, but it sounds really cool, Robert. Did you want to expand on that?
Sure. This was hearkening back to, I think it was Carolyn's, or who was talking before, Barbara's statement about she doesn't have any control or any say-so. I think there's a lot of absolute statements I hear, especially from people like Garrett Kramer and such, that tend to be very absolute, you know, that there's only source energy, we don't actually exist as separate beings, so on and so forth. Well, that might be true from the absolute point of view, but the absolute only knows itself. It doesn't know anything else. So as long as you think you're you, that's the reality you have to deal with it, with whether it's absolute truth or not. So I liked your response to Barbara was, what feels good to you? What makes sense to you in this moment? And I think that's the reality we have to deal with and not get hung up on metaphysical theories that may or may not be true for us in the moment.
That makes total sense to me. I agree with you. I really agree with you because I've just been in the metaphysical world and all that. And it's just good to stay with what feels good. Sometimes I read Garrett Kramer's things and sometimes I've heard things have touched me, and sometimes not just Garrett Kramer, but everyone. Sometimes I read things that people write and I just pass over it because it's not my experience. Now, there's a really beautiful feeling when it comes from your personal grounding. So if you see the world as perfect and oneness, people feel that from you. And that's all I have to say about that. Just go with your experience. I mean, I think I'm just on the same, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I'm hearing today is that whatever our experience is in the current moment, that's what's real for us. And that's what we have to deal with. And if we can recognize to the degree that it's coming from our thinking, then we may or may not take it so seriously, like our life situation. And as far as questions about absolute reality, we either know that or we don't in any given moment. And if we don't know it, all it is theory. And I don't think theory is all that helpful. At least it's not to me anymore. It used to be fascinating to me. Now I'm interested in what can I know right here, right now, and how does this feel?
I'm on that boat with you. I like that.
Well, that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Yeah, because the truth of it is, in any moment, I could be in a misunderstanding or not. And like for me, the faster I can make friends with wherever I'm at, the better.
Yeah.
And
that's why I like what Barb said. You know, this is what feels good to me, what makes sense to me right now. But that left the door open that, you know, 2 minutes from now, I might have a different insight and see things completely differently. And I like that. I like the possibility that it might change, and that's okay.
yeah, I like that too. I like that she was able to say that in that way too. And back to the simplicity of it, because we think we have to make a lot out of it. This is the most ordinary, natural understanding in the world. That's why 2-year-olds do it. And there was something else I was going to say, and I forgot what it was, but I did want to address something else in that. Carolyn was talking about, you just think you're insecure. she was saying that I think it was problems in marriage. So Carolyn, if you want to get on and clear up, I don't quite know. Wait, we're kind of over time, so we might not have a lot of time. But do actually, oh, I think I know what maybe you were talking about. Are you still here, Carolyn? Was it maybe, hi, was it maybe that U-turn of wanting your husband to be a certain way and you start to kind of take a U-turn from like just seeing it different? That was it? Oh, that's the coolest thing. That's like a whole, it might take a little time, a whole nother conversation, but you're welcome to call me and ask me some more. And also you guys check my website because I'm going to be doing a couple of different things. But when you start noticing your husband or your wife or your close mate, that they don't cause you to feel things. And when you start, if you feel bad about something they say or do, and you start just allowing yourself to have that feeling and not so much reacting to it or trying to change that, you could change a whole relationship. It's almost like a phenomenon. And it doesn't guarantee that the person changes, but if there's ever a time that the person's going to change, your openness and not taking their craps personally gives the most advantage of possibility. That sounded weird. The most possibility for the person to change. You're just openness. The same with the unknown thing. The more and more you're in the unknown, it gives you the most possibility of figuring out something new that's the best thing for your situation. It defies logic because we always thought we had to figure it out. And with a husband, don't go to bed angry. No, no, no. So I always thought that. And so like, don't get to bed angry, you know? He's pissed off, you're pissed off. And mathematically, two pissed off people makes a fight. I mean, it just works that way. And when his low moods or her low moods have nothing to do with you, you have this competitive edge in a relationship or in a business. Or I call it also a healing edge. Or I forgot what I called it. But anyway, you have an advantage, a healing advantage, a competitive edge. When you start making the U-turn from thinking you have to fix them to see it your way or to treat you a certain way, when you take that U-turn and you start bringing it back home to you, home to your feelings, have something to do with you, what's so cool about it is there's surprises along the way. Like what happened to me with the living in the unknown. Like you drop deeper into the unknown and deeper, and then, I don't know, it comes out of me to make a doctor's appointment, which I didn't know I needed, but it served me quite well. Same with the relationships, you know? So I think that's what I meant about the U-turn. You know, one time Linda was working with my husband and myself in front of an audience of about 80, Linda Pransky. And mostly the first day was about my husband. So it just didn't have much to do with me. What I found fascinating is what was running his mind while he acted in certain ways. But the second day, he said something to the effect, in front of this audience of 80 people, he said, but she'll go bankrupt. She'll make the family go bankrupt if I don't, blah, blah, blah. And right then, it was almost like I said, what? I wanted to tell everybody and have them understand that I shop at thrift stores. I'm not going to send the family bankrupt. But Linda Pransky kind of drew a line and showed how me just stepping over into his world. See, that's just his thinking. It has nothing to do with me. I could even find it funny and humorous. But the fact that I stepped over into his world and made something personal about just his crazy thinking, then I'm starting to feed all that stuff that I don't like in the relationship. So maybe, I hope that answers your question. So I think we're kind of, oh, good, good. But look at my website, because I'm going to do some things pretty soon. Are you going to come back on and unintroduce me, Bonnie?
I'm never going to unintroduce you, but I am coming back on. Thank you so much, Wendy, for all of this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I just want to let everybody know that Wendy's website is right now in the chat. I'll also post it under the YouTube recording. So anybody listening to this video later, this webinar later, can find it. And next webinar is on June 27th at 2 p.m. And it's with Win Morgan. So hope to see you live then.
Oh, Win's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you.